Hi guys, so let's now take a look at demand and marginal revenue for a single price monopoly. So this monopoly is not using price discrimination. It doesn't have different prices to different consumers. It has therefore got one single price that's being charged. Now, in relation to our table that I've drawn out here, what we can see is the price level fall as output increases. So the greater the output level, the lower the price will actually be. Now, of course, that is very much in keeping with the theory behind imperfect competition and the fact that if you are in charge of the industry and you are producing more and more output, then the price level will fall as you actually provide a greater quantity to the marketplace. Now, there are consumers that will pay high prices, but likewise there's consumers that will only actually want to buy the product if it is at a low price level. So we can see the corresponding total revenue. Just remember that the price equals the average revenue, so demand equals the average revenue. We've seen that previously, and simply by dividing the total revenue by the quantity, well, we can see that we derive the average revenue, okay? So 32 divided by 2 equals 16, for instance. So let's run through our marginal revenue and just work those out. So we can see that to start with, we go from 0 up to 18. So of course, revenue as a whole increases by 18. With our next example, we can see that that falls then to 14, an increase of 14, then 10, then an increase of 6, then we see an increase of 2, and then it becomes minus 2. So revenue now after this fifth unit is now beginning to actually fall. So that is quite significant. We can also see that this fall continues because now we see minus 6, 48 down to 42, 42 down to 32. So that fall continues. So then we're at minus 14 and then finally minus 18 there. Okay, so there we go. Let's now have a look at actually drawing out the demand curve for this monopolist. So if we just link the points corresponding to the price and the average revenue, we can see this is where D equals AR. That is our price schedule for this sole price monopoly. So depending upon the output level really does determine what sort of price level they can actually charge. Now we can also include our marginal revenue, which shows how each additional unit of course increases or decreases the total revenue. So let's put that in, and what we will see is that the slope of the marginal revenue curve is twice as steep as our average revenue curve. Now we'll come on to this in a little bit more detail, but just notice that we've got our average revenue. At this point we can see the price equals 0, so therefore total revenue will be 0 if you are releasing 10 units, and we can see that there. Likewise, we can see at a quantity being provided of 0 units, well, the actual price is 20, but the total revenue derived at such a point is 0 because no one is actually prepared to pay that much for the given good. So let's now put in, just before we move on, let's just focus on the fact that the marginal revenue goes negative. So we can really see the fact that this is going to be our point where total revenue is maximized right here. So where marginal revenue equals 0, MR equals 0, this is very, very significant. The reason being because this will be the point where total revenue is maximized. Here we can see as we come down our marginal revenue curve, we are continuing to add more revenue from each additional unit of output that we actually sell. So we continue to add more and more revenue to the total revenue accumulated. Thereafter, we see that marginal revenue turns negative, and that of course means that selling additional units beyond 5 as an output level here means that total revenue then begins to fall away, and it obviously falls away quite substantially. Right, so let's now just reflect on our total revenue and just illustrate the picture that's taking place here. So we can see that we reach a peak level of revenue, and that corresponds perfectly with the output level of 5 that we have here, and where MR equals 0. Because when MR equals 0, we're right at that total, the top of the total revenue curve, and so revenue cannot be increased any further. It will simply mean if you sell more units of output, revenue will start falling. Okay, that's good. What's also really relevant to this as well is that when it comes to this point here, this is where price elasticity of demand equals 1. So price elasticity of demand equals 1 at this point. Now, the reason for that is because prior to this, we can see that here we are actually dealing with a price sensitive or price elastic nature of the to the product. So this is price elastic. So price elasticity of demand is likely to be greater than 1 if we ignore the negative there. Okay, so that simply means that if you continue to reduce the price level or increase the output, you will continue to actually increase revenue. Beyond this point, beyond where price elasticity of demand equals 1, then we would then see price elasticity of demand turn inelastic, okay, so become price insensitive. Now, at such a level, we can see that the price elasticity of demand will be less than 1. Over here, of course, it's greater than 1. So just coming on to this point, if we're at 7 units of output and we actually increase the price level from, what have we got here, around about 6 as a price level at 7 output, okay, and we can see that there. If we increase the price up to 8, then our revenue increases. Okay, so that really reflects on the fact that the price elasticity of demand is inelastic, okay, and increasing the price will overall increase the actual revenue until you reach this point where MR equals 0, we have revenue maximization. Is the firm going to want to pursue that as an objective? Possibly, in some circumstances. This is going to be good news for the company's cash flow after all, but revenue is a very, very different kettle of fish to profit maximization. Now, it may be at certain times of the day, for instance, with a bakery, that they actually choose to pursue revenue maximization by reducing prices of their goods to make sure that they have as much revenue inflow as they possibly can. So that would seem to be an appropriate strategy then, okay, but generally speaking, monopolies will charge somewhere along this area where MC equals MR up here, somewhere around here, and here we can see quite obviously that we are dealing with price elasticity of demand being greater than 1. Great stuff, guys. I hope that's been useful.